Alright, today I want to be going over how to actually use your healing cooldowns. Now this is something that is quite significant, especially in a fight like Mistress, where your actual cooldown timing is very important. Now I'm going to start off with this topic by asking you when would be the correct time to use something like a revival. So we see Hydra Shot coming up in 3 seconds. Logic dictates the best time to use that revival would be after the Hydra Shot hits to get maximum throughput from that revival. But that's actually incorrect. So your job as a healer is to make sure that you're keeping people alive. Your actual HPS is basically irrelevant. If people stay alive, then you're going to get to the end of the fight actually dies. Your throughput, maximizing your throughput as a healer is really quite insignificant. It really doesn't matter up to a point. So, back to the question, when would be the correct time to use this revival? It's going to be just before the Hydra Shot, so everybody's topped up, so the Hydra Shot doesn't actually kill anybody. So as you'll see here, when we go through, you'll see right now, the revival actually gets used. Hydra Shot has 0.3 seconds left. Now this is not a mistake. This is done on purpose. So you'll see here that the people who are most likely going to die will be the Shadowblade, who has a Consuming Hunger, VT, who has a Consuming Hunger, the Ink, and the debuff from the Abyss Stalkers. And the revival manages to top up those 2 targets there, so they're at full HP, so when the Hydra Shot actually hits, boom, they don't actually die. Now, if the revival wasn't used there, those targets would be at a much greater chance of dying because they didn't get that large amount of healing just before it went off. They might have been at 3.5 mil HP, someone might not have soaked in their thing, and they might have just hit the ground and died. And that's a death, that's a B-res, and for that one healer, that extra 10 mil healing they could have potentially gotten by waiting to your revival at, say, this point, where you'd be getting a lot more throughput, doesn't really matter if somebody actually died to the mechanic. Your whole point of using healing cooldowns is so people just don't die. Now, while the monk could have gotten, say, 10 million more healing from that revival, it doesn't really matter. You'll see how easily we are actually able to bounce the raid back up to full HP after this, because the damage really, apart from the targets with Consuming Hunger, isn't really that high. There's a little bit of spot damage, but as you can see now, once the Hydra Acid has kind of worn off, the raid is going to stabilize again. So using that revival beforehand worked out, prevented some deaths, and we were very successful with that. So you'll see the same thing with my Trank coming up. We have the Hydra Shot in 8 seconds. I know, again, that my job as a healer is to keep people alive. So what am I going to look to be doing? I'm going to be looking to be tranking before the ability goes off. So see right now, 3 seconds left, Tranquility is going off, making sure that I'm topping all the targets. Now you will see a couple people die here because I didn't get through the tornado, but the targets who, are going to be at risk of dying don't actually die because I'm using Tranquility. I'm making sure that my healing goes out before the actual mechanic hits, and that they're full HP for the mechanic. Now, there is kind of a caveat to this. Now, this is only for specific mechanics. When you go into a fight, you have to recognize, what's the damage like before the mechanic hits, what's the damage like after the mechanic hits, and what the mechanic actually is. So for something like Mistress, where you have, people taking spot damage before a big hit comes with like Hydra Shot, you want to be using your healing cooldowns before that Hydra Shot hits. And that is specifically to make sure people live through that Hydra Shot. Now, on the contrary, in this fight, we have something like the Devouring Maw, where the Devouring Maw isn't at risk of killing anybody immediately, but it does do a large amount of damage over about, 8 to 10 seconds. So then how do we want to be using our healing cooldowns? We want to be using them to maximum effect. So we want to actually be using them while the mechanic's going off. So you'll see on the contrary to that, for this Devouring Maw, I'll actually be using my Tranquility while the Devouring Maw is going off. So there is situations where you want to be doing both. But you'll find for most mechanics, the actual best time to be using your healing cooldown will be just before the mechanic hits. You see the same thing in Goroth with the stars. If you're going to actually be using your Tranquility just before the star hits to make sure everyone's at full HP before that star hits, no one's going to be dying from that star. Then the damage after the star hits really is quite irrelevant because your HPS as a healer is much higher than, what a lot of the fight actually needs it to be. And that we kind of see that in what our overhealing is. So I'm going to make this video really short. Hopefully this will help you out with your Mistress progression. A lot of healers, in the high end will just not do this at all. Very rare you'll actually see a monk use revival before a mechanic hits. But it is actually the correct thing to do. Now obviously some people are going to be kind of averse to this because my HPS matters. And I would say that's quite silly. But that's my opinion, and I hope you can learn from this, take from this, and use this on your mistress progression, and hopefully get through a couple hard shots with less deaths. All right, thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed.